The Big Tech Podcast, brought to you by Sky Broadband. Get the power to do more with Sky's best ever Wi-Fi, with lightning fast speeds rolling out to 1 million homes.
Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian, the tech editor of the Irish and Sunday Independent. And this week we're going to talk to a guy who can literally sell air, because he has actually joined a company that specializes in clean air. But before we come to Kieran Hannon, a big shout out to Sky Broadband for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you to Sky. Kieran, welcome to the podcast.
Lovely, Adrian. Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
You are sitting on the west coast of the USA, the envy of about 62% of everybody in this country, because you can basically move around, right?
True, we can move around. You're absolutely right. There's even talk about partially reopening stadiums, entertainment areas, water parks.
Stop! I don't want to hear it.
I know there's talk, but at the same point, look, we're all in the same boat. You know, I think the vaccine is a big next step. There's a lot of people waiting for the vaccine. People are moving around a little bit. It's an outdoor part of the world, so we got beaches and stuff. So you can kind of still say socially distant, but
see, we have beaches as well. I mean, I'm familiar.
What's up with this swimming in the winter in Ireland? What is up with this?
You're asking the wrong guy here. I don't get it. I've
crazy.
A lot of people who are passionate about it. And I read one very persuasive account, actually from Jessie Buckley, the Irish actress who's in Fargo season 4 and a load of things at the moment. And she said that it happened when they had a lull in their filming and loads of the crew members were going in, and she just started to go in, and now she goes in every day. I still don't get it.
I know, it's amazing. And don't get me wrong, I think it's wonderful. Kudos to them. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, kudos to them. But sometimes I walk down in Dollymount and with the dog, and I see them going in, going out, and really, I'm not 100% sure if all of them are feeling the joys when they come out. They're kind of a shade of purple. But anyway, I believe them when they say it.
I think it's a mediation thing. I think it's helping them mediate or do something, reset the clock in some way. I know, but fair do some. I was a lifeguard and I wouldn't even get in the summer, never mind the winter.
You're a lifeguard?
Yeah,
in the States?
Hole in the wall.
In the hole in the wall. That's my favorite beach in Dublin. And it's actually still a secret. Every late May, June, listeners, I promise we will get to the tech in a minute. Every late May, June, I go up there and I take sunset photos, because there's a particular time of the year when the sun sets right over the body of the water, because the beach is kind of a crescent shape. And it's a particular sort of an effect, and it's the best place in Ireland to take a sunset pic. Anyway.
I mean, speaking of pictures real quickly, that's where I saved my money as a lifeguard in the summer to buy my first camera, Olympus OM2. And I mean, that part of Dublin is just beautiful. I know exactly sunsets you're talking about. So anyway,
a lot of people still don't know that beach. Anyway, we shouldn't really be talking about it, because the first rule of hole in the wall beaches, you don't talk.
It's closed. Yeah.
So you've just moved into a position, Chief Marketing Officer of WellAir. I mean, it's a kind of an interesting concept, the clean air concept. Now, from WellAir's perspective, you're talking about medical grade stuff. You're talking about professional use through brands like Novaris and the like. I'm used to dealing with a lot of brands like Dyson who sell stuff for the home to clean up your air. But why are you joining the company now?
Great question. Well, thank you. Look, clean air is one of those last frontiers that people really didn't fully understand, particularly indoor air. Indoor air, it's 90% of us breathe indoor air versus outdoor air. 90% of the time you're indoors breathing that air. And it can be up to 10 times more contaminated than outside air, right? So you don't know all the pollutants, all the things that are in that particular environment, whether it's a commercial environment, whether it's just a regular kind of industrial building with stuff that's there, or whether it's even in the home. You just don't know.
What kind of stuff? I mean, from products, from your heating system, but
exactly all the emissions that come off if you're cooking food, if you've got paint, if you've got old carpet, if you've got mold, if someone just sneezed, whatever it is, right? It's this unseen, unknown, right? Surfaces you can kind of understand, it's a little more tangible. You might see it dirty. The air, on the other hand, it's that intangible thing that you just don't see or fully understand. And the impact on your body, your physical body, your lungs are the only internal organs that are exposed. right? And so as you breathe, you live. And so that's so critical. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's just increased awareness around that. So for me, it's a real noble cause, really, to help educate people about the importance of good indoor air quality and what that means. And then, of course, in the medical grade space, the criticality of what it means within surgery rooms, ORs, ICUs, and so forth.
I mean, you could easily understand the use case there. Is it that, are we becoming a little bit, is this a first world problem? I mean, is this a kind of a sensitive issue that maybe some people have, but a lot of us would just like to guard against in case there's a problem there?
One could say that, but actually the evidence shows the opposite. For instance, you look in the medical community, the percent of infections that happen, hospital, infections that happen in surgery, post-surgery, and so forth. If you're able to, reduce that by half, I mean, the amount of lives that are saved, first and foremost, that's the critical part, but also the economic value that you add, the risk mitigation. Here in the United States, if someone does get an infection in the hospital, the insurance companies don't cover it. It now becomes the liability of the hospital. And you know what day rates are in hospitals over here. Suddenly a hospital's looking at a bed that's been taken up by an individual, a patient that they're now liable for, they're funding it. So that bed can now not be billed to insurance. And it's just, if you have 20% of your patients getting some kind of infection, what does that mean? So again, that's a very important part. And of course, nowadays, I mean, it's a first world issue. How do you say it's a first world issue if people are dying from the pandemics, right? So
I mean, 100%. And this is a good time, I suppose, to be joining a company that's focused on clean air, because some of the brands that WellAir trades in, I mean, they detect novavirus, detect bacteria, particles, all sorts of stuff.
Exactly, the pathogens, the viruses, the bacteria, right? And so you think about, and what's really beautiful about this story, Novartis, which is the medical grade technology, plasma technology that we have, brand, that was started 10 years ago. And people may not know this, the roots are at DCU in Dublin. DCU has probably the highest percent of plasma scientists in the world. They have a real plasma specialty there. And that's the roots of Novartis. And Novartis has spent, the last 10 years building out a very robust product family. The Fen 1050, which is the top of the line, just recently received FDA 510K clearance as a class 2 medical device. That means that now that medical grade technology that you want and you have in those environments are also now available in commercial and residential environments. If you're someone who's prone to pulmonary rheumatology or a lung type environment, right? This is a way to keep your environment clean so you can breathe and live the way you need to. If you've got allergies, asthma, you name it. There's a lot of medical wellness issues start with the lungs, and that's the beauty of this type of solution.
Some of them aren't that severe. I've personal experiences. It sounds dramatic. It's not as dramatic as I'm going to relay the story. But I had to sell an apartment. The first apartment that I lived in and I bought, there was something up with the air in that apartment that wasn't the same in other apartments, because I had two other friends who lived in the same block. I lived there for 2 years and it never went away. I used to have just dull thudding headaches anytime I'd stay in the apartment, and then they'd go when I left the apartment. It got to the point where I rang up the architects and the builders, and they came around and we would look at it. And I think what the issue was, it wasn't ventilation, because it was a brand new building. There were still gases coming from the building materials. But that was 1999. It was actually very difficult to pursue or advance an issue like that at that time. I ended up having to sell the apartment because I had to live somewhere else that was 20 years old, like most normal people do instead. So my own history with this is, I mean, it's quite in tune with what you're talking about. And yet at the same time, I will talk to guys in Dyson, for example. They're coming out with a super duper new home air cleanser. And some of the things they say they're guarding against sound a little bit over the top to me, but that's just me wearing my, pull your britches up
Look,
ridiculous.
There's this. You have to understand what is it that you need. You, as a purchaser, as a buyer, need to understand your current situation. What is it you are dealing with, and what you need to protect against, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, though, you're insured, and the beauty about the products and the portfolio that we have with Novar's, Plasma Air, and our NuvaWave, we've both got a portable solution, we have an in-duct solution with Plasma Air, and we have a surface solution with NuvaWave. So if you think about the indoor environment, whether it's air or surface, we have a solution that works right for you. But back to your question, that apartment that you talked about and the smells that you're having, those and that is thrown off by the new construction, right? That's a common thing as well. And some of that are related to VOCs. Those are things that some of our solutions, a lot of our solutions actually address as well. Smells, so you go into long-term care facilities, right? You've a wide range of things, including, aromas that you may not enjoy. Our solutions solve for that as well, in addition to everything else. But the beauty of it too is you don't know what's next. And so to be future-proofed as well with technology that can address something, those hidden dangers that we don't even know about right now, that's also an important element. So getting the right technology, a plasma type technology with our non-strike, that ensures that you can address concerns today, tomorrow, whatever is on the horizon. And that's the beauty of it as well.
Cool. Okay. I mean, you've been in the States now for what, 30 years, 35 years? 35
years. I came straight after college. I was 21 years up in San Francisco. I'm 14 years now down in Los Angeles.
Yeah, you've done a creditable job at keeping about 70% of the Irish accent.
I tell folks here I'm from Alabama just to fuck with
mess with their head. Yeah. Normally in the States, a lot of times people will ask whether you're, me anyway, Australian or South African. I get that quite a lot.
Similarly, they know, they're not quite sure. Are you, English, or are you Australian? They get that because I'm it's a blend,
But I end up doing what I can hear a tiny bit of what you're doing as well, and I end up slowing down just a hint. Just so they'll understand me. And so I'll end up maybe over pronouncing the R's. I will start to use a little bit of a lilt up and down, a bit like that.
You're so right. When I first came here, talking so fast, and people would be looking at you, and then I'd have to repeat it. So you're right. I purposely slow down my speech. What's also amazing, when I came over in 1985, walking through the street to San Francisco, looking up the banks, they had these big signs with IRA, and I go, oh my gosh, they're publicly funding the IRA, supporting the IRA. It's so funny, yeah.
There's a lot of those things. I had the chief executive of one of the biggest e-scooter rental companies in Europe on a few weeks back, and we got a good 2 minutes out of the ride thing, because all of the scooter companies talk about, you want to go for a ride, or you can have a ride, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And similarly, bad language, we can use a lot of bad language that they just don't understand, or that's not especially bad over there. Words like wanker, for example, are not especially.
Tosser. I'd even throw in feck or shite just to kind of slice a little bit, get around it.
You get away with it. But you were with Radioshack as well for a few years.
I was with Radioshack for a few years,
That must have been interesting, because Radioshack, as a kid going to the States, Radioshack was the toy 100%. Shop. It was the Americans would say Candyland. We walk in there, and they'd have things like remote control cars, and they'd have they'd have computers, and they'd have Texas Instruments and Commodore 64s and all this kind of stuff. It was just unbelievably exciting. It must have been an interesting period when you were there, because was that around the time they were switching to mobile phones, or that?
Okay. So Radioshack at the time launched Nokia in the United States. Nokia's launch was because of Radioshack. Outside the carrier stores, Radioshack sold the single largest number of handsets and mobile plans in the United States. And what's also interesting was twice a month, when someone got their paycheck, or living, paycheck to paycheck, they would come into Radioshack to pay their phone bill twice a month. So you would see cash receipts twice a month be about 80% of the till. It was incredible, right? Yeah. And the profits that were spun off from mobile phone sales helped Radioshack stay alive, because at the time, as you said, Radioshack was the place to go. There was no competition at all whatsoever. I remember being in Ireland, getting the Radioshack catalog, and that was my thing I would dream about as a kid. I would go through, remember those thin little pages? They're like phone book pages. You go through and you dream. It's phenomenal what you go. And I worked in Radioshack, you know, as I was VP of marketing. I would go in and work in a store just to see people come in, they gesticulate, I need this to go with this, right? And you would, and then by process of, the other thing that was nice is all the store associates and the store managers, they had a lot of longevity of Radioshack because of the training and because of each level of certification that they got through, their salary, their hourly wage increased. And so there was a lot of retention, a lot of loyalty to the company. That's why they were very, very knowledgeable. You know, there was that campaign, you know, with Radioshack, if you know the question, you know the answers. We have questions, you got answers, kind of thing, right? They could solve it, and that was the big thing. So Radioshack was a phenomenal brand. Of course, what happened, just like all industries, everybody else started to sell the same products, right? The Toys R Us came up. All the Main Street stores started to sell the same products. Radioshack introduced remote control cars. Everyone else carried remote control cars. And of course, e-commerce. So they just didn't keep innovating the way they needed to.
And then Best Buy had these giant things, and you could go and get kind of anything you wanted there. But I wonder, it's fascinating to me every time I visit the States to see the big box retailers that are still in business, that are slightly fading, the ones that are resilient, and the ones that are on the way up. I do wonder, though, whether physical retail for stuff like tech, some of them have done quite well and being fairly resilient. But I do wonder in the medium term whether we're starting to see a sort of a gradual decline of physical retail.
We're humans. At the end of the day, we're humans, and we're very tactile. We love to explore, touch, you know. So showrooming is going to be very, very important.
So you like that? You would be a believer in the narrative that is, no, there will definitely always be a place for that kind of physical shopping.
100%.
Okay.
Without a doubt. And you may even see the pendulum swing here a little bit. We've spent so much, all of us collectively globally, in an e-com world, right? And it certainly satisfied certain things, which is great. But just that exploration, that serendipity, that joy that you find something that you weren't even aware of, right? And that's the beauty of these type of things. And so, and also, you know, in some countries, actually going shopping is a form of entertainment. I remember at the time in Puerto Rico, the only place where you could get these type of products was at a Radioshack. And 2 of the top 10 stores in the Radioshack, they had at the time about 7,500 doors. 2 of the top 10 were stores in Puerto Rico. They each were doing $10 million a year.
I mean, that seems, on one level, that seems completely logical, because if you talk to anybody in Dublin at the moment, you know, where they go for kicks, often it's to Lidl, because it's the only place open. You know, like that center aisle of all of those like work kits and sort of, you know, €11 runners and tracksuit tops and like coffee. You know, I find myself there almost every weekend. You know, ogling it the same way as I used to, you know, go into Radioshack. So I take your point about that. Yeah.
And it's a balance. I think the pendulum's going to swing quite heavily to that in-store environment, people going to the malls and celebrating that for a few years. I think you're definitely going to see that. And I think the balance will come back, a happy medium. So you'll find people, you know, looking at in-store and ship to home type environments. That type of solution is going to be big. And I think a lot of the kind of commodities and day-to-day kind of consumables you may still get as an e-com solution, but those purchases that are going to be more impulse style, you're going to want to go out and enjoy it.
Word about the Irish in the States and in Silicon Valley in tech, doing pretty well at the moment.
I mean, the Irish seem to do pretty well wherever they go. That's I think, a universal thing, just the nature of who we are, and we get on with everybody. And I think, you know, we're quite entrepreneurial. We get in there and we get things done, and we don't kind of get caught up with all the other stuff. So I think the Irish universally well recognized for that. In the Valley, for sure, I'm down now in Southern California. We now have an Irish consulate here in Los Angeles, opened 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago. Orla Keane is the consul general, and Barry Gwynton is the vice consul. So having that here now, helping support the West Coast consulate general, which covered all the West in Hawaii. That was such a huge territory. So now we've got a group here that's really helping consolidate, solidify the Irish community here. There's been pockets of different groups, and now it's just great to have this kind of champion that helping bring us together. So absolutely, there's a bunch of Irish entertainment, content, music, the production side of entertainment and the talent side. It's really gratifying to see. But in the tech world, there's a bunch as well, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we all know about people like the Collisons. There are lots, but take the Collisons, for example, over here. But it's only when you see them written about and talked about by, Wall Street Journal, by Chronicle, by an awful lot of people who you would really regard as being up there themselves, you realize actually what an impression some of them have actually made.
Oh, hugely. I mean, the Collisons are, I admire them immensely just for their vision, foresight, tenacity, and importantly, they did it themselves in their own way. Sometimes folks like that get influenced by a bunch of others, the hanger-ons or whatever. The Collisons have always done it their own way. And I admire
it's kind of incredible
that.
To the degree they've managed to do that, because I know what you mean, but even at a very top level, Stripe is now going 10 years. It's privately funded. Any other company in that kind of a space would have massive pressure on it for a liquidity event, an IPO or something like that.
So I would say capital event, right?
Yeah, right, capital event.
Yeah.
Not so seemingly with Stripe now. There's every year there's article after article. Is this the year that Stripe goes public? Every year, John Collison was interviewed. I spoke with him 8 weeks ago, and he said exactly the same thing that he's been saying for the last 6 months. No, we don't feel the pressure, and it's not going to happen. But to have that much control over your own destiny at their level,
it's that is the definition of a unicorn, right there. I mean,
they're unicorn, decacorn, centacorn. Is that the next one?
But the thing about it is, all of their metrics is still pointing in the direction that for that capital event to happen, they can realize a lot more. And so that's why they're on the right track, right?
Yeah.
They got the vision, and they're delivering, and they're continuing to show where the direction's going. And then the rest of the platform that they're building out, that's all the plumbing part, which is very hard to do. That's their defensive mechanism. And so they've nailed it. Kudos to those guys.
They're also the only kind of tech titans, if you like, who've managed to do it, and let's face it, remain fairly squeaky clean. There's almost no big, massive tech company where the founders get away with, with surviving for 8-10 years without something attached to their name. Nothing. The Collisons.
Because that's who they are. That's who they are.
The good guys of tech. I've just completely cursed them, but they are the good guys of tech.
They're absolutely good guys, and they have steadfastly remained that way because they've focused on it, and they've just not allowed themselves to be pulled away and get caught up with all the drama. So the other thing that's lovely down here, it started about 3 years ago, Ireland Week, which was an opportunity Deirdre and Buzz O'Neill brought to LA because Brit Week was going on. With Brexit, Brit Week went away. These guys had, again, foresight to bring Ireland Week. So now we have an environment to celebrate all things Ireland with the culture, music, arts, entertainment, tech, business, you name it. So there's a platform for that as well. And that's going West Coast. So there's lots of great things happening. We're very excited.
One or two last things. In terms of marketing, you've been at or close to the top of marketing for a couple of decades now. Is there anything you've really noticed in terms of how it's changed?
So I would say, firstly, in the pandemic, all bets are off. Historically, marketers, when you go into an organization, there are programs that are set in stone, sales programs, events, whatever it is, right? And we could never, put an ROI on it. And it's just because it had to be done, we've always done it. Now all those bets are off. So what's really happening is the voice of the customer is front and center in everything now a brand is doing.
Right.
And so that's huge. And so I think the really good marketing leaders are taking advantage of that and building out programs within the organization that's addressing the voice of customer and all the touch points and the solutions needed to do that. And so that for me it's a very leveling game, and it's exciting. Like for instance, in the financial services, right? You know, all of these retail environments that banks felt that they needed to have, they wouldn't invest in their digital experiences. That was always third or fourth down the list. That has now been completely flipped. All the money's gone to the digital experiences, and the physical is, you know, it's minimal at most. And so, you know, people that work in regulated industries, they're seeing lots of change because the pandemic has required that. For instance, in in the healthcare, health tech space, e-commerce, here in LA, there's a great company called GoodRx. They're like the Google e-commerce engine of getting best price prescriptions. They've expanded now, and they are a source of information for the ideal doctor for your need. And they're also helping with the vaccine. So these are examples of where they started in a very specific way and a vertical. Now they've gone horizontal in delivering the totality of solution.
One thing I'd be interested, just very quickly, on your view is a thing I hear an awful lot from big companies around values and branding, particularly online, and being in touch with customer branding. And I often wonder about this because it strikes me, I wonder if there really is a connection there, or whether it is possible to muck up your brand online in a damaging way by being a bit of an asshole. And what I mean by that is not to be facetious. An awful lot of companies I can think of, big companies, tech companies, non-tech companies, their CEOs or their founders or their senior executives, some of them are controversial to the point of alienating quite a lot of people in their online presence. And yet, to the best of my sort of vision, it doesn't seem to affect their business an awful lot. And you could look at any of the social media platforms, a lot of the tech companies, you look at companies like Oracle, you look at companies like Salesforce, they have very outspoken, you know, founders, leaders, and they get really bad press sometimes, but it doesn't really affect the business. I mean, in Ireland, I can think of a couple of companies like that as well. I'm not going to name them, but I can think of them. And their core business is going very strong, despite the fact that they're, you know, controversial online and alienate quite a few people. I just wonder where the reality, where the truth is between the narrative that says that you have to be completely in touch with your, you know, sensitive customers' concerns and the reality of, you know, your business or your service might be utility that people are going to use anyway, and that all publicity sometimes is good publicity. I don't know.
Yeah, to some degree. Look, there are certainly, you know, founders who are quite vocal out there, and some of them, you know, their mission, their personal mission is also consistent with their company mission. I think a company like Salesforce probably is closer to that, and people, you know, buy into it and support it. And again, you know, as Salesforce, they were pioneering the space that they're in, right? Cloud CRM. So they have the good fortune of being able to do it from a very strong position, right? If some of the more challenger brands might have a little difficulty in some aspects of that, but again, they need to be here, and they do that. I personally have a problem with, you know, where founders are so provocative personally that you have to diverge the individual from the company and what they're doing at the company.
Yeah,
I think that's what some folks will do. But then they make the decision whether or not they want to support the company. So look, it's a complete minefield. Social media and all the various platforms out there, there's so many, it's just hard to keep up with. There are mistakes made. If they recognize the mistakes, I think forgiveness is allowed. But I think it's real important that you have a true north, and that you remember that your constituents are also your employees, your shareholders, and your customers. That's the critical thing. I think that's, you have to abide by those.
So keep your core customers and your staff on board, and then that's a major thing. And then the people who may or may not buy your services anyway, important maybe to keep them on board as future customers, but not as important as the first set. Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So It's an interesting dilemma. Unfortunately, I've not had to deal with it much. But if I was with a brand where that was happening, I would.
I'm not expecting from Mr. Pope or from yourself any radical outbursts in the next few months.
No, and in Ireland, look, it's tremendous. Being part of a company that with the roots in Ireland. For me, it's kind of returning home, which is really nice. As I said, Navarre started there 10 years ago. We've got two amazing distributors, McGreal's and Fannin. And, Fannin's on the medical HSE side, McGreal's on consumer side and business. Just to see the growth in Ireland and the brand validation we have, because the company spent the last 10 years doing all the necessary research in order to prove why the technology, plasma air technology that we have and the nanostrike technology that we have is so effective. And so I'm very proud to be able to do this.
Fair play. Well, Kieran Hannon, CMO of WellAir, thanks a million for joining us on the Big Tech Show this week. And thank you also to Sky Broadband for sponsoring this podcast today. But for me, Adrian Weckler, tech editor of the Irish and Sunday Independent, that's all we have time for this week. So I'll talk to you at the same time next week. Bye-bye.
The Big Tech Podcast, brought to you by Sky Broadband. Get the power to do more with Sky's best ever Wi-Fi, with lightning fast speeds rolling out to 1 million homes.